Awesome. All right, I have like 115 slides to go through in like 12 minutes, so I'm just gonna get started. Bear with me, this could be really bad or not, I don't know. Hi, I'm Emmett. Firstly, thank you, Deanna and Natasha. You are great people. Secondly, Boys Club is the coolest. These are really important slides, teach you a lot about Web3. Thirdly, everyone here is awesome. You're all doing amazing work. Keep the faith, keep being curious, keep having fun. RIP, pump it. I was asked to talk about online marketing today. What is it? So, warning, I'm going to talk about children's books and some other nonsensical stuff. It might make sense, but I don't know. Hopefully it's helpful, melty face emoji. Part 1 of like 40, businesses as brands. Here are some businesses I've built or launched or helped scale. It's a lot. A common thread is that these businesses are brands. Branding, to me, is helping businesses tell their story. So story is going to be a common theme I talk a lot on. Don't get me wrong, a good business is a good business. But great businesses are often great brands. That's because as humans, we like stories. We like interacting with the world around us and telling stories of said world. The truth is important. I always got frustrated with this New York Times campaign because, for better or worse, stories are more powerful than truth. I like truth, I'm just saying. So for this room of innovators and early adopters, tasked with telling stories of emerging startups, products, protocols, and business models, how do you communicate what you're building when what you're building is still being built? AKA, how do you tell stories when the story isn't complete? I have a hunch it requires to first take a step back in time. Chapter 2, read, write, own. If you look at the history of the web, there are 3 main chapters. Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. We've all talked on this stuff kind of today. Nerds kind of call it static, social, semantic. Cooler nerds call it read, write, and own. I like the phrase, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme, so let's rhyme. And look backwards to look forward. That was from Back to the Future 1. This is Back to the Future 2, if you're paying attention. For starters, in Web 3 today, there are many narrative parallels to Web 1 transitioning into Web 2. Let's head back to the early 2000s, great fashion, to see how they told stories online then. And note, I challenge us to less reference the 90s, also great for culture, but for Web 1, for telling stories in 2024, and I'll talk on that in a little bit. First, let me take a little detour to talk on how I like to tell stories online in the quirky way that I've constructed narratives. So that brings me to part 3. Being an adult or navigating reality is hard. I have a pretty selfish way of thinking about online storytelling, and it starts with almost nothing works for me in real life. I understand very little of what most people normally understand. I struggle with ordering coffee, filling out simple forms, understanding instructions, detecting social cues. Any physical object, situation, interaction, I often break, get stuck, get lost, or get in trouble. In the early 2000s, this day-to-day frustration somehow turned into advantage for me in a nascent space of digital branding and marketing, because if I could design something online that was easy for me to use and understand, it basically worked for everyone. We built all the apps and everything and stuff for Sweetgreen. This is all them trying to figure out how I could order a salad online because I just couldn't do it, and it took like an entire team where I was just like, it doesn't work, doesn't work. I felt weirdly safe working on the new canvas of the internet. Okay, so back to the early 2000s, I remember wishing the world around me could operate like children's books. My mom was an artist. This is pattern on the left. She did some stuff, did all that, the book in the middle. You might think Little Planes that I'm working on now on the right. I got to watch her work on 24 books growing up, and I learned a lot about how they were designed to teach kids not only reading, but complex life lessons in simplified, understandable stories. I like this quote for making children's books, aim to inspire, teach, and entertain. It's actually from ChatGPT, but when I started designing online in the early 2000s, I thought a lot about how to make children's books for adults. I thought that could be my topic to offer up today, so that was my long intro. Part 4, children's books for adults. Time travel alert, we're going to be going back around a lot. Going back to the 90s as Web 1 culture was emerging in this world, a lot of contemporary, at the time, internet storytelling was idyllic, utopic, world-changing, and democratic in spirit. At the time, it was seen as jargony, wonkish, and not easy to understand. It was like adult instruction booklets given to children. While we can look back fondly, like #retro nostalgia, vaporwave aesthetics, for many at the time, the internet felt foreign, alien, and scary. The headline, they're just giving up, very 90s. which is how most people in this room, not in this room, feel today about Web 3. WTF is HODL, you know? Note, I think much of contemporary Web 3 startup culture has reverence for the more innocent, pure Web 1 90s, I get it, and disdain for the corporate internet Web 2 2000s, which I understand and philosophically agree with. This is a pattern we started in some ways of combating burnout, attention economy, Jenny Odell 101, but marketing-wise, I think it's a red herring of reference point for today. Web 2, for all of its fallout flaws, was a time of incredibly effective storytelling. This era helps the internet go mainstream, and that is a more historical reference point for Web 3 right now. My wife doesn't like the phrase, but I was going to say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I think in some ways that's what we do. In the early 2000s, when Web 1 was transitioning into Web 2, this is when I came of age as a digital designer. It was also around the time skeuomorphic design started to take hold as digitally native design language. As more people moved online, digital designers took design cues from the physical world to help new internet users understand how to use foreign-feeling digital tools. They thought showed them something familiar. I love this. Skeuomorphic design would fade away over time as users started to understand more internet-native UI UX. But at the time, it was revelatory for me. It felt like you could take moments out of the messiness of physical reality and place them on a new canvas one at a time for people to engage with. To engage with childlike focus, relearning how to use tools that once familiar and foreign. At the time, I thought of websites as interactive PDFs. When a website and later an app was done right, it felt like a children's book for adults, like Ray Dalio's Principles for Success for Children, but for adults. A website or an app could inspire, teach, and entertain an adult, just like a children's book could for kids. So, part 5, children's books for Web 3 adults. Today, we're retrofuturistically at an inflection point. How do we design, communicate, and market to an increasingly wider audience that is still trying to understand what we're building? Let's go back and look at the principles referenced from children's books. Inspire, teach, and entertain. Good storytelling transcends mediums and subjects. There are always universal narratives to lean on. The Hero with a Thousand Faces classic. A great children's book, Shel Silverstein, love him, helps a reader slow down, unlike me, be present, be engaged, and learn. To do that, authors and illustrators pace out the communication, speak in universally appealing language, and make complex subjects simple. There are great lessons when marketing for adoption. I like the phrase, nothing is more complex than simplicity, and great children's books are deceptively simple. Web 3 can often feel like nothing but complexity. So let's simplify. I like ERC 4337 account abstractions. I think that's a cool route to getting things to be a little bit more simple. And shout out to TYB before, I just like this kind of framing, which is pacing concepts in marketing. Explain what we're building like we're talking to a 10-year-old. And so again, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, like who cares, but this is just my thing if we're trying to hit adoption curves and get more people to understand what the heck is going on in this room, is talk to them like 10-year-olds. So in short, make children's books for Web 3 adults. So conclusion, almost done. I think I'm pacing well. Great marketing is about understanding human nature. Love Michael Jackson, I don't care. Telling memorable stories and making experiences people can understand. So you can go back to an old Nike ad, you can look at TikTok, UI, UX now, but at the time, one's great storytelling, one's great user experience. Being an adult is hard. This is me passed out in the old office. I just couldn't deal with life. Being a biological mammal with brains and desires that have arguably been the same for hundreds of thousands of years, trying to navigate a hockey stick curve socio-techno reality is definitely hard. Give grace to your fellow adults and treat them like children. So that's what I got. All right, thanks.
Wow. Emmett Shine, one-man comedy show.